Did you know that organizations lose an estimated 5% of revenue to fraud every year? That's according to Occupational Fraud 2024, a report to the nations, the world's most comprehensive study on fraud in the workplace. The report to the nations analyzes actual fraud cases investigated by CFEs from around the world and offers actionable insights to protect organizations from harm. We looked at data from more than 1,900 cases across 138 countries and territories, and we found that the median loss per fraud cost organizations $145,000, and the total losses across all of the cases in our report exceeded more than $3.1 billion. And potentially impactful things that we saw this time is that we had been observing the median loss caused by frauds going down and the time to detect frauds going down for the last several studies. Over the last 10 years, each of our reports had a slightly lower median loss and a slightly quicker time to detect the frauds. In our 2024 study, time to detect frauds still stayed pretty low, but the median loss actually jumped up 24%. So what that looks like is that during COVID, people stole more faster. Asset misappropriation schemes were found in 89% of the cases in our study, but these were the least costly frauds. That's because the title of most costly scheme goes to financial statement frauds. These are the least common schemes, but they caused by far the highest loss, a whopping $766,000 in median losses per case. And the longer the fraud continued, the more it cost the victim organization. Frauds caught within the first 6 months had a median loss of $30,000. But compare that to the $250,000 for frauds that lasted between 2 and 3 years. And even worse, cases that went undetected for 5 or more years caused a median loss of $875,000. They need to understand how much really is at risk here. Typical fraud is this, but a whole lot of them cause a lot more damage than that. So we can't just sit back and say, oh, it's only $145,000, that's fine. We can absorb that. The reality is there's a lot more that can be lost. And that 145 is still one case at a time. You could be having multiple cases happening at any given time. This is why internal controls like whistleblower hotlines and fraud awareness training are critical pieces of a complete anti-fraud program. 43% of the cases in our study were detected by tips, which is more than 3 times as many cases as the next most common detection method. And on top of that, tips were twice as likely to come from employees who received fraud awareness training than those that did not. Recognizing the warning signs of fraud is crucial to prevention and early detection of fraud. In our 2024 study, 84% of fraudsters displayed at least one behavioral red flag, such as living beyond their means or using bullying or intimidation tactics at work.
Nobody has an unlimited budget, and their organizations have to make tough choices on what they do and don't invest in. And so you can take some of those pages in this report that talk about organizations that had a control in place versus ones that didn't, and the difference in the median fraud losses that they suffered, and really pinpoint what is going to likely give you the most return on your investment or be worth prioritizing.
We release this report every 2 years to help anti-fraud professionals across industries and regions recognize trends, benchmark their anti-fraud programs, and elevate their skill set for the future. You can visit acfe.com/RTTN to download this year's report, a guide on how to use the report and its findings, shareable infographics, and so much more.